you everyone for coming. So I think we're ready to get started. Um, we have just a really great topic today, and I'm really excited to share all of this with you. Minnesotans are deeply connected to water resources for many reasons, and it's really no wonder because Minnesota has almost 45,000 miles of lake shoreline and over 138,000 miles of river shoreline. We have a little link to some fun water facts from the DNR. We'll drop that in the chat, but I just love learning about Minnesota's waters. Um, we will be collecting questions during the presentations, collecting questions in the chat, and we'll be answering them after all the speakers have presented at the end of the webinar. So just add your questions anytime, whenever you hear something that you have a question about. And then to start off, we're going to hear from Burke Murphy, our state coordinator. And then right after that, we're going to take the picture. So turn your cameras on so we can see you, or turn them off if you're not comfortable. Understandable all the way around. So Burke, you ready?
Thanks, Allison. Absolutely. I'm going to share my screen and give you all a brief introduction to Minnesota Women in Conservation and our sponsor, Renewing the Countryside. Can you see my screen? Yes, thank you. Good, good, good. So, Renewing the Countryside is a nonprofit that has been working in rural resilience for over 20 years, supporting and connecting stewards of the land and farms with necessary resources. We want to thank the NRCS, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, for funding this MNWiC initiative, and to the Minnesota branch. Our objectives are to welcome all women in agriculture and land stewardship, to increase women's knowledge, understanding, and use of conservation, climate-smart practices, and of the NRCS programs. We are here to shepherd women through the process of program assistance, and ultimately, we want to build a lasting legacy of relationships and regional networks. How we do that is through our priorities to equip women with knowledge and understanding to develop their own conservation plans and support them in the process. We do that by building these networks through potlucks, webinars, field days, and sharing our stories from the field with learning circles. And this is a picture of our host today, Allison, having her first learning circle December 2024, actually, was remarkable turnout. And here's an example of the number of women that we have reached from across the state of Minnesota, 1,343 women since fall 2024. We hope that you will continue to join us and deepen and expand our connectivity to grow our capacity as conservationists. We have a list here of the collaboratives that we are building a network of women in conservation to give you a sense of the scope and the scale of women who are involved in this work. And we are really happy to celebrate the fact that RTC, Renewing the Countryside, and MNWiC have been able to award over 50% of the women who applied for a summit scholarship to attend next week's Midwest Grazing and Soil Health Summit. The SFA sponsoring this has said that the 2026 summit may have the largest contingent of women farmers yet, following the outpouring of interest from women graziers. And fittingly, the United Nations has designated 2026 as International Year of the Woman Farmer. So we want to also bring your attention to the fact that our Northwest Regional Coordinator is hosting a potluck workshop on winter seed sowing with extension in Moorhead at the public library tonight, this evening. That's an in-person event. And so here are the links to our regional coordinators, my email as well, and the QR code will bring you to the website. But for the first time, we are asking if you would just take a few moments to complete our survey, 3 questions at the end of the webinar. for us to be able to learn from you, because in fact, the webinars have the largest attendance population. For instance, 108 women registered for this webinar. There's 42 with us right now, but that may increase as the hour proceeds. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and I'm going to hand it back to you, Allison. Thank you.
All right, get ready for that picture. All right, we got some people coming on with their photos, with their videos. Great. Oh, wonderful. All right. Go, Maddie. 3, 2, 1.
Okay, hold on. Da, 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 da. We all look lovely. Okay, perfect. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to get started with Laura Mendoza. Laura founded Great Roots in 2022 to provide consultation for native landscape projects with a special focus on shoreline restoration, helping property owners control erosion and increase biodiversity. Her projects are community-driven. Family and friends get together to learn and assist with the installation, which I think you'll learn about in this presentation. So take it away, Laura.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for being here, and thanks for the invite to talk about this. Okay. Well, we talked in the chat about all the reasons why we love our lakes, and they might look different for everyone. But in order to either swim, just enjoy nature, fish, or whatever it is we like to do on a lake, we need clean water and we need clean lakes and healthy lakes. So that is why shoreline restoration is so important. In talking about shoreline, we will define shoreline as that line that divides the water from the land. And then beyond that, we have the shoreline. And in a more precise context, the shoreline is the 1,000 feet over the ordinary high water level, which that's defined by the DNR. They have, it's kind of the average level that each lake has. And then you can find, for most lakes in Minnesota, this information in the DNR website, but it's a good way to know also what and who needs to do certain permits, because if they are into the ordinary high water level, they need a DNR jurisdiction. And then if it is above that into the land, then it might be the city or the county, depending on what it is you are doing and where you are at. And then we have the lakeshore vegetation profile. And starting on the right, we have the open water. In the open water, the depth of the lake doesn't allow for light to go through the water as well, so we will see very little vegetation. Then we have the floating and submergent vegetation, which the water lilies are the most characteristic of this group. Then we have the emergent vegetation, which is that vegetation that is closer to the shoreline. And that vegetation can handle either water levels that are high for weeks and the plants are all underwater for a period of time, or being above the water level. So they are this transition type of vegetation. Then we have the lake bank, and the lake bank is that vegetation that still can handle some humidity, still moisture, and still can handle being underwater if it was a huge rain event or the spring just from snow melting made it that way. And it can be, in all of these profiles, it depends on the topography of the terrain, which kind of vegetation is going to be present. So that applies to for the lake bank, and then the upland vegetation that can handle drier soil, and then depending on how much light they get, then it's which kind of vegetation we will have. But every part of this vegetation profile has a very important piece in having a healthy ecosystem and in protecting shorelines from erosion. So the submergent and the emergent vegetation will help protect fish, right? They are gonna find a place for hiding or nesting, but also it's gonna slow down and break water energy from waves, from boats, wind. That way, when the waves come, they won't hit with the same strength or shoreline, taking soil width or causing undercut. The lake bank and upland vegetation are also helping us keep our lakes clean by filtering excess nutrients and other contaminants before they make it into our lakes. And they also provide habitat for pollinators and many other wildlife. So that is why it is important to see all of this profile, because they all have an important piece on our shores, on our lakes. And also with the lake bank and the upland vegetation, what is important about them too is the roots that they have. So all the way on the left, you will see the long grass, and they only have inches of root system. They only go a couple inches deep, while native plants, and this picture shows prairie plants, and lake bank plants are less deep because they don't need to be finding water too far into the ground, but they still go 5 feet into the ground. So they are really holding everything together. So they are also defending from water runoff and from when big waves come. So they are very, very well adapted to and very resilient to in any condition. And there are other benefits to have a natural shoreline. And one of them is that when you establish a natural shoreline, it might need maintenance at the beginning, right? Some weeding or adding some more plants or different things. But then over time, it needs less and less maintenance. So then you have more time to enjoy the space and go swim or whatever it is you'd like going to do at the lake. Another good reason, geese. If the geese are just swimming on the lake and trying to find somewhere to get into land, if there is vegetation there, they are not going to want to go in that area because they don't know what's on the other side. So they will find some nice groomed lawn to get into. So that's another good plus. But now that we know what to do it or why to do it, then how do we do it? And it will depend on what our conditions are currently. Maybe we have grass all the way to the water, or maybe we already have some vegetation, but we aren't sure of what we have or if it is good, or we have noticed that there is some erosion issues in some areas. So then what we do? I'll say the first huge step will be to reach out to your local soil and water conservation district, because they will have technical assistance and even in some cases funds available to support your project. So they will help you see what's necessary, should you be doing, who even to go to, and yeah, sometimes funds. I would say an important piece here too is to know that every soil and water has different rules and different amounts that they have covered and different timings. Some of them start collecting projects through the summer, and they have a period to evaluate all the projects in the winter, and then next year is when you actually will be getting funded. There are others that they do as they come, still planning on installing through the summer. And another good reason to reach out to them is because I have seen people stopping mowing 5 feet from the water or 10 or whatever it is. And in some cases, they are lucky enough where they had already native vegetation that had been just mowed. But in other cases, they have invasive plants that they might not know that are invasive, and then the seeds are transporting to their neighbors, the next door neighbors, or just through the water, even beyond that. So it is important to know what's already there too, and if it should be there. So that would be another good reason to reach out to Soil and Water, but also you can use an app, like Picture This app is one of them that you could use to identify and know what it is, and then look it up and see if it is native or not to Minnesota, because that app might not tell you that. And then what do we do if we did have a lawn or invasives on our shore and we want to transform it into natives? Well, one would be to pull out, but this will only work if it is just some plants here and there, right? But if you have mainly invasives or all lawn, then you might need to look into other options. The swipe method would also work for if you only have some invasives, and this one you will need to use a herbicide, and then you will put a thick rubber glove and some fabric or the herbicide and some fabric or a cloth or cotton glove, and then swipe the plant from the bottom to the top. So cover the whole thing with the herbicide. So that way you are targeting what you're treating and you are not overdoing it. Also make sure that you are using a herbicide that can be used by water. The other option would be to do solarization, where you use either a clear or a dark plastic, put it on the ground, and leave it there for several weeks to months until everything underneath dies. I would say don't try to disturb the soil, just leave everything as is and then plant, because we don't want to disturb the soil. And that might just allow for seeds to spread and it will be chaos. So the other option is with suppressant mat, which we see in this picture, and it's made out of cellulose. It kind of works like the landscaping fabric, except it is biodegradable. And it's in this place in a specific for the picture, they had a lot of tansy, which is invasive. So they just mowed it down. Then we installed the weed suppressant mat. We left it there for 6 weeks until everything started dying. And then we made the holes just for the plants. And here you need to plant a little closer, because the weed suppressant mat is not going to allow for seeds to spread. So the plants are not going to be spreading for the first at least 3 years. But it's a very good option to not use chemicals and still control either invasives or a lawn. And then if we have erosion issues, well, one, as I mentioned, the deep roots of the vegetation are going to help with that. And then we have other options like the willow wattle. So on the picture on the left, you will see some branches and stakes into the ground right at the shoreline. And that's the willow wattle. So it's a bundle of willow branches that in most cases are allowed to dry. I cut it and allowed to dry for about 3 weeks so that it doesn't sprout, because willow likes to sprout, and it's a good thing if it's not blocking your view, but you probably don't want it right in front of your chairs that you use to enjoy the lake or your fire rink. So that's why I let it dry. So we bundle it together on site, and then we bring it in place and stake it. And it can also help collect debris from the lake in some cases, and then it can rebuild the soil. But a very important part of this too is that it was gonna be breaking the energy from waves so that your new plantings are protected, so they don't get taken away by a wave. And in the picture on the right, we see this is a shoreland, right? And we talked about how they affect our water on the lakes too. In this case, they had just bare soil, and they were seeing how it was eroding. And every time that it rained, they saw the soil washing away, and it just ran through. So they had put some socks, as you can see on the picture, but supplementary to that, we did a soil wrap right on the top. So a soil wrap works like a speed bump, and it's a roll of soil that it's made on site that goes a little over or higher than the higher point of our slope, so that it helps to slow down water that way, but it also gets planted with natives so that the roots help us filtrate water so that it doesn't just go through. And then we put erosion control fabric and native plants along the whole length of that area. And that's a very good way to control erosion. In this, I will add too about the vegetation, is that if you're planting into the ordinary high water level, so the emergent plants, you will need a DNR application to collect and or transplant aquatic vegetation. And that doesn't have any cost, and all it does is that they want to make sure that you're using plants that were grown locally, but that are also natives. And then, as Allison mentioned, the projects that I do are done with a community built approach. So that means that people bring their families, friends, neighbors, lake association members, and they all help with the project. I think it's a very cool way to do it because one component and one thing that can stop people from doing this is money. And when we don't have to pay a crew to come and do it, then it gets less costly. But also, the cabin at the lake, it's usually a place where it was the grandparents, and now it's our parents, and eventually it's gonna be our grandkids, maybe. So if everyone in the family is part of this project and gets involved in the house and wise, then they get that sense of pride and connection, but also have those skills that they are gonna need to maintain it, and they are gonna understand why it was done. And it's a good way to connect with your neighbors and your community, help them out. I have been in projects where people didn't know each other and they had been there for a while, and now they know a little more about them too. And it's a good way, yeah, as I said, just to have those skills and gain those skills. So if anything happens, you don't need to call me or anyone to come and do anything for your project. You already know what is needed or how to do it. And maybe if you need the materials, I can help with that, or you can see where you can find more willow, or I don't know, but you have now the skill, so you can take care of it as well. And yeah, that's it on my part. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. That was perfect timing. You did great. Laura was really concerned her presentation would be too long because she had so much to talk about. And I just want to remind everyone to please put questions in the chat. We will be covering them after all the presenters have gone. There's also a lot of great links in the chat to check out. So yeah, we're going to continue. We're going to go on with Kristie, who's going to present about Mary Keefe's property. Mary is on the webinar with us, but Kristie, just because of connection issues, Kristie's better placed to actually do the presenting. So maybe we can hear from Mary after. But yeah, I'm really, really happy that they're both here. So Laura is just going to do a quick introduction for Kristie and we'll get started.
Yeah, so Kristie, thanks for jumping in today. And Kristie is the Shoreline Restoration Director of the Whitefish Area Property Owners Association Board. And she has been helping people through the time that she has been serving the board, connect them with funding or volunteer assistance or anything else they might need for making their projects a reality. And she always shows up to the projects that I have been working with, and she's a volunteer, so she's a great, in general, advocate for the protection of our lakes, either if it is with shoreline restoration or now she's also getting involved with invasive species control, so and education. So thank you so much, and I'll let you to it.
Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be with you today. This is Kristie Roedl. I'm the Shoreline Restoration Director for WAPOA, Whitefish Area Property Owners, and I've been doing this for about 6 years now. So what we're first going to look at here is the background regarding Mary's project. Mary asked me if I would come and look at her property because she was concerned that she was losing shoreline. So that was back in 2020. So Mary and I have been hanging out together with Laura for quite a while. And then what I do is I go out to a property and I take pictures and then I send them to my contact at Crow Wing Soil and Water. And then I say, okay, do we think this would be a good project to get involved in? And they either say yes or no, or generally it's yes. And then what we do is then WAPOA, I budget for 10 site visits. I pay the 150 out of my budget. And I found that if I do that, that jumpstarts those projects and gets them going even faster. So Clayton at that time came out and did the site survey and wrote up all the notes. And then once that was done, Mary reviewed it. She liked it. So then we put that out to bid. And then when it's a little bit smaller project like Mary's, oftentimes I'll ask Laura to get involved in it. And she and I work together on many projects. I think we have about 6 of them lined up for this spring. But here you can see the erosion that's happening. Mary was losing shoreline. And then with the WAPOA support, and let me back up. Once a proposal is done, then that goes to Crow Wing Soil and Water. Then they decide in January which projects they are going to support. And oftentimes they support the projects by 50%. Like if it's a $6,000 project, they'll pay $3,000. So that's been very, very helpful to get a lot of my projects jump-started. Next slide. So this is phase 1. This was in 2021. And I think one of the things that I need to call your attention to is that often my projects start the year before. So I did the site visit with Mary in 2020, and then January, they review them, decide what you're going to, and then in the spring of the next year, that's when they do the project. Some people feel that's a long time, but it gives you time to make sure your design is good and it's going to last for 10 years. So 150 feet of shoreline, this is the volunteers. I have a pretty large database that I work from to get volunteers to help with projects. Like Laura said, we call them community build. And it's really nice because a lot of people work together. As you can see in the picture, there I am again, helping with carrying the willow wattle down to the water's front. The lady back behind me is actually another lady that lives just down the shoreline from Mary, and now they're doing projects on theirs too. There was some challenges here for this project. If you can see the bottom picture, we had the willow wattle tucked in, but before it was a little bit farther out. And, you know, there's always things you can learn from. Well, Trout Lake is a busy lake. There's quite a bit of wave action on that weekend, and it washed some of the willow wattle loose. So Mary, Laura and Shelley came and pushed it farther back, added another row and tied it down with ropes. And now we found that that works really well. Then you can also see the native plants that are back behind the willow wattle. Some of those we had very large rain events and they were actually underwater. And Mary and a number of people were very concerned about them. But we were thrilled when we went back in the spring. There they were, very healthy and very well hydrated. So it worked out really good. One thing I always say is that the natives, the first year they sleep, the second year they creep, and the third year they leap. So it's just always good to be patient. But willow wattle is a good way to help break that wave action. And then oftentimes you'll get soil coming in the back of it. And actually you can sometimes gain your shoreline back. Next slide. Okay, this slide is a really good one because it shows you how the willow wattle is installed. It shows you the growth that has happened. Now remember, the actual visit happened in 2020. We planted the first in 2021. So you can see how the willow wattle is holding up. You see the biodegradable stakes that are in there. So it's good to have some good, strong people that can help pound those stakes in. And then the willow wattle is tied to the stakes so it stays in place. Next slide. This is some wonderful pictures. I love these of all the plant growth that's there. I think Mary might have taken some of these too, all the flowers that were there. And then you can also see the willow wattle down below here with the stakes and how it's actually lasting, and there's getting some nice growth back behind it. So next slide. This is phase 2. I always seem to be getting all these pictures. I just can't understand why that is. But this is worked on the remaining 75 feet of the shoreline. And then we supplemented phase 1. So who you see here in this picture is, that was my contact then, Adam from Combing Soil and Water. This is a big bundle of willow that Laura has cut and let dry. And then we're pulling it out and laying it on the ground. And then, like Laura said, tying it into bundles. So it's really tight. One of the projects, we had a retired surgeon and she was showing us to use surgical knots on. So it was pretty fun. It's a lot of great community. So next slide. Okay, so here is a really good one. You can see how the soil is and debris is coming back. It goes on top of and through the willow wattle and gets deposited back behind it. This doesn't always happen, but if it's low grade that goes down like Mary's is, then you can pull it tight to the shoreline and tight to the bottom, and then you might have a chance of reclaiming this shoreline, and that's what's going on here. And you can see the growth and you can see how the plants are established. Next slide. Again, these are some more wonderful pictures of the milkweed and the larvae for the monarchs. I used to actually raise the monarch larvae and when they came into butterflies, and I'd take them to schools and the kids would release them, but I haven't had any recently. But on the next slide, then you can see how there's the growth that is coming. And Laura worked with Mary to get rid of all the reed canary grass. And this one is for 2024. Remember, we started this project in 2020, but you can see these two guys here. That's Jarrett, my existing contact now with Crowing Soil and Water, and Sam is the guy with forestry. He was there, but they're pounding those biodegradable stakes in so that they will stay in place, and the willow wattle will stay in place, and then tie the ropes to it. And you can see the growth over here on the side and over here. So these projects used to be about an afternoon, but now last year it seems like they were a day and a half. So it's exciting that they're getting bigger and more people are looking at them and wanting to do what their neighbors do. So we're very thankful for that. Next slide. And then I think this is one of the last ones. You can see the flowers again that are growing. And then I love this one with the baby fawn laying next. And that's our whole goal, is to protect the shoreline help increase the diversity, get rid of the invasive species, and help the monarchs and the pollinators and all that good stuff. And whenever I go somewhere and look at projects, the first thing I say is, please stop mowing all the way down to the shoreline. And I say to them also that if we add a buffer, which is native plants, it doesn't have to be messy. It doesn't have to be tall and block your view, but it can help your environment and keep your shoreline there for your grandchildren to enjoy. Next slide, please. Is that it? Are we done? Oh, okay, great. Thank you very much. And hopefully, Mary, you'll be able to speak a few words because we miss you.
Thank you, Kristie. Yeah, record time. That's great. Is Mary still on? And do you want to say a few words, Mary? I have lost all the people here. Maddie, I don't know if can you find Mary and spotlight her? And Mary, can you take your mute off?
I am looking and I don't see anybody whose name is Mary, so it might be under a different name.
It's
It's
M-E.
Oh, there.
MERRY.
Yeah.
There you are.
It's magic. I would just add a
There.
couple of things. One, how grateful I am to Laura and Kristie for their resources and ideas and expertise. And this is a kind of project that does require a community and requires sound judgment to get it done. And I think it's not just about how pretty the shoreline is, but it's about the health of the water of the lake. And it's about educating other people about the damages that fertilizing your lawn can do. So I think it's multifaceted in terms of the benefits of doing this. And it's really amazing how organized and well-run the whole project is in terms of the Cross Lake community. So thank you all. And it's a lot of work and it's a lot of fun. So good things happen. Any questions from me?
Well, we'll have everyone put questions in the chat and we'll come back to them for sure. So thank you for being here, and Mary and Kristie for presenting on Mary's project. We do have some extra time, which I'm really grateful for, because we have a representative from the Minnesota Agricultural Water Quality certification program with us, Ellen. Maddie, can you find Ellen and spotlight her? I know there's so
Here
many.
I am.
There's so many screens. So Ellen is going to
Alright.
share just quickly with us what that program is and why it's important. So maybe a little bit of background. So this MNWiC is for all landowners, but we do have some targeted like farmer programs and some things, since we're funded through the NRCS, that we like to highlight every time we have an event. So Ellen is here to kind of help us with some of that. So go ahead, Ellen. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me here. I think we're all here because of some amount of shared appreciation and love of our waters and desire to care for those. And Lakeshore Restoration is a big, important part of that as well. But also management of our uplands are important as well. So I do water quality work with the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. And agriculture has a huge role to play in caring for our waters and stewarding stuff that way. If you think about what I think Allison shared some really good stats, 40,000 miles of shoreline along lakes and 100-something thousand along rivers. Thinking about agricultural lands, there are 26 million acres in Minnesota in agricultural lands. That's about 50% of our land base, and the way that those ag lands are managed has enormous repercussions for water quality. So I am here to kind of talk about an MDA program, which is focused on working with agricultural landowners and farmers to steward their land in a way that promotes and restores water quality. So I'm just going to share my screen if that works. Give you a visual. All right, that come through? Maybe? Okay, awesome. So I work with the Minnesota Agricultural Water Quality Certification Program, which is a mouthful, and it gets shortened sometimes to MNWiC, which is also a mouthful. So it's a joy in that way. But it's a really cool program. Just to provide you a little bit of background, I'm just going to give you an overview in case there's interest. So it is a voluntary, freely available program where we conduct whole farm water quality risk assessments with the use of a kind of agronomy and conservation professional. So we can work with farmers, so land managers, and we can also work with agricultural land owners. So the idea is you could invite us out and we'll complete a kind of a water quality risk assessment on your farm and then identifies ways to mitigate some of those water quality risks. So we're really focused on meeting people where they are and helping them implement improvements, and then also celebrating and recognizing all of those land managers and landowners who are stewarding their lands in a way that like promotes and protects water quality. So you may have, see these kind of signs around Minnesota Water Quality Certified Farms. So that's recognizing producers who have gone through this assessment process and are kind of operating at a certain level of stewardship that they qualified for this certification. So we currently have over 1,700 certified producers in Minnesota, and that's spanning about over 1 million acres. So a lot of land, but also keep in mind 26 million, I think, is cropland. So significant chunks, but also significant way to go. Just briefly, kind of these are some of the factors that we look at. So we look at like farm information and like the crops that are being grown, animals being raised. We look at field characteristics like slope, types of soil, the vegetative cover, precipitation that we receive. We also do a lot of work with nutrient management on farms, focused on nitrogen and phosphorus, since those are kind of our kind of key nutrients of concern with water quality in the state. So working on rate, source, and timing and placement of that. Also work with tillage management, look at pest management, conservation practices that the farmers would be using, and then also just kind of looking for site-specific resource concerns in that location. So we kind of use all that criteria and we complete an assessment, and then we kind of recognize the areas that farmers or land managers are doing a really good job, and also areas that there's room for improvement. So it's a great way to kind of document and identify resource concerns. Can offer kind of like a check-in for producers to see where they're at, or validation to recognize the good things that they're doing. It opens up some technical and financial assistance resources that can support the adoption of conservation practices or implementations, like, could be lakeshore restorations. That's not typically what we're doing, but, that sort of, those conservation water quality improvements. It's a way to recognize the people that are doing a good job. I think it's easy to kind of lump people, agriculture as the problem, but also recognizing there are people that are doing a really good job stewarding these resources and caring about that. And it's also a way to share for farmers and landowners to share their story. And it kind of also, I feel like maybe we're all connected to agriculture in different ways. I think maybe some of us are farmers, some of us are agricultural landowners, but we're all eaters. And was it Wendell Berry that says that eating is an agricultural act? And so like this kind of certification could also be a way of, if you're a consumer who cares about water quality, is to, support the farmers who are also care about this. And so that's kind of one way to look at that. But big picture, we're focused on supporting farmers and the long-term on the ground adoption of conservation investment and best management practices that protect and restore our water quality. So I think there's a link maybe in the chat for the website, but if that is something you're interested in, if you're a farmer and you want to go through the assessment process, if you're a landowner and you maybe want your renters to go to the assessment process, it's all available. So you can go to the website, and we've got staff all across the state that can work with you. But with that, that's my contact information. Feel free to reach out. I will hand it back to Allison, I guess. Thank you.
Thanks, Ellen. I'm really glad you could join us. I also want to quick touch on before we get to questions that there are a number of NRCS conservation practices that farms can qualify for that have to do with stream bank, shoreline, riparian buffers. We'll drop a couple of those in the chat, but there's certainly not an exhaustive list. The best way to find that stuff out is to visit your NRC office. Also, your regional coordinators that are on this call right now are here to help you make those connections. So just, we don't have an NRCS person here to talk about them. I need to get that out and tell you how great they are. So definitely something to look into if you have a farm number. So what is next? We need to get to questions, don't we? I typically have, I think Alex handle the questions, or do you want me to go?
Either or, Allison. I could get back to the top.
Yeah, take it away.
All right. Locating a weed suppressant map. It looks like Felicia was wondering where to source one, and maybe Kate added in like biodegradable strings, and if it makes sense for lawn removal or weed control in non-shoreline applications.
Yes, for the weed suppressant mat can be used if you want to just transform for a pollinator garden or just a garden. You can use it. I'll say if it was just a garden, then you probably want something else because you might want to loosen up the soil. But if it was for flowers or pollinator garden, then yes, you can use the weed suppressant mat. MNL does sell it and they do deliver. Otherwise, white cap is another option, or some places where they have landscaping materials. That's also where you could find it.
That's great. Thank you. And we have a comment from Dawn. They are currently building a lake home on Cedar Lake in Aiken County. It's entirely wetland. They can build a boardwalk to the lake and clear out dead fallen trees from working with soil and water, obtaining a permit. She's curious on the recommendations you would have for native plants in wetland areas.
Yes, it will depend what's already there and what your goals are. If you want to mainly add more flowers, then they will be very similar to what we will add to lake bank, and some examples will be Joe Pye weed, swamp milkweed. Let me think of others, but I will need a little more time maybe, and also just know what your goals are. And Blueberry is another good one that will grow well there. And I don't know, it depends too also if you're looking for a certain height or if you prefer shorter, closer to the boardwalk, or different things like that.
Yeah, so it's quite extensive. This is Dawn. It's quite extensive, and we had Henry out from Soil and Water a couple of times. Just recently talked to him. So I guess my thought would be I would just come to your office, set up a meeting, and kind of talk about what it is, just simply because you're Aiken County, right? I just didn't know if you've done wetland areas, because they keep telling me I can add plants and flowers, but I can't do anything else. So that to me is like the willows, the willow wattle or whatever it is, and then plants in that or something. I'm just not quite sure.
Yeah, and we could set up a site visit too, and I could come over and give you a plant list and
Cool.
some options so that you can get them.
Okay, I told Henry I'd get him out there too again this fall. It's just I thought it would be in the spring, but it's probably going to be the fall. So, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent. We have something from Kate. How would you handle a short and steep, completely eroded shoreline?
Erosion control fabric. And for that, I will probably use a double mat. So I would use Curlex and Jute, which is thicker, a thicker type of fabric, and then plants. It will likely be just closer to the water, might be the lake bank type of vegetation or shoreline vegetation, but then probably in the above 2 feet it will likely be woodland type of plants. And we want something that it spreads quick so that it helps protect that soil.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
this is Kate. Can you repeat those two fabrics, please?
Yeah, and I can write them too in the chat. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
But it's Curlex and Geojute. Or coir mat, actually, it will be for this specific case. And you will put the Curlex on the bottom and then the coir mat.
There was a question about the willow wattle, which is a new phrase, and I love it. I will work on it. How long do you leave it? Is it a permanent structure until the plants are established? Maybe if you like it, go for it.
Yeah, for the most part, I leave it there forever. And a lot of times, like you saw on Mary's pictures, you don't see them. And what you can do is just cut the tops of those stakes so that they are not there, or you don't see them, or they are not in the way too. And also, it can also be removed, because I understand sometimes people don't want them there for forever, especially if they are not collecting debris. I usually do that when it's an access area. So then we leave them there for a full year at least, once we know the plants are very well established and they won't get affected if the big waves come.
Excellent. All right. Something about North Dakota residents eligible for Minnesota grants. Would they be able, I guess, would the Minnesota grants be able to be used on the Minnesota lake property if they're not residents of Minnesota?
Interesting.
Yes. Yes, as long as you apply in the county that the lake is at, then it doesn't matter that you are not there full time. And a lot of the people that I work with, or some of the people that I work with, and that's the case.
Wonderful. And this is a question for actually Ellen for the water certification. Is there a minimal acreage requirement for someone coming out and doing water for you guys to come out?
No, not really. It's just whether or not you're kind of engaged in agricultural production in a meaningful way. But honestly, we've worked with as small of organization as Community Gardens in urban Minneapolis. So we'll work with all types.
Right on. There was another question here about plants used and deciding how you decided it, and I think you sort of answered that in terms of which what plants to use in different things. It sounds like it's a goal-oriented sort of and figure out native plants for that microclimate and wherever they're located with that lake.
Yeah, and then even the height too might be a consideration. Sometimes even the colors, because there are people that are like, well, I don't really like yellow flowers. Can we do something that it's not yellow? And then I plan on that. But it's important to have diversity, because then you will see flowers throughout the season, and then there are different pollinators throughout the season too. So it is important to keep them fed, right? And yeah, the height can be a thing, or some areas you might want more of a lawn look, and then you just do sedges, for example. But I do try to have a good mix of sedges and flowers, because sedges have deeper roots than flowers, so we want that, and some bushes as well.
I see a question from AJ Johnson about certification for agriculture with the NRCS available in other states. I'm not totally sure, AJ, what you're wondering about, but if you wouldn't mind coming off mute to ask your question.
I might be able to guess at that too. If you're talking about certification, with the program I talked with, it's a Minnesota Department of Agriculture program, and so it is unique to Minnesota. Our neighboring states don't have anything similar. It's nationally a pretty unique program. There are, I think, maybe a few states out east that have something somewhat comparable, but no, this is Minnesota only. If that's not the answer to your question, please jump off mute now. But
Great. Okay, good. I'm glad that got answered. Yeah, and Laura, I had a question, with the prairie natives too. Like I'm seeing some overlap of stuff that grows out here in Western Minnesota as opposed to, like I think it's drought tolerant for this region. Are a lot of native plants pretty adaptable to getting, will I see something like blazing star, that's here in the prairie, something that I could potentially put on the lakeshore, or, is that too much water for it?
There are varieties of blazing star that can grow by the water. And then I will go with those. And then if you have a steep slope, then maybe on the higher points, you can do those prairie variations. Then you want to stick to wetland or wet meadow plants closer to the water.
Wonderful.
Alex, there's one that was a little bit higher up that I think we missed. And will these techniques work along river shorelines as well as lake shorelines? It's a really relevant question.
I would say it depends on the conditions, because rivers are a much more complex environment, because we don't only have the water coming like right towards the shoreline, but we have that sideways movement. So then if there's a lot of erosion, you might need something different and more specific.
So we do still have questions, and I think our speakers can stay on a little bit after to continue to take questions, but we do need to do this pop-up survey before 1 o'clock. So Maddie's going to set that up for us. And so it's just going to pop up on your screen. It's, I think, 3 questions and hit submit. Thank you so much for participating in that. It really helps us guide future programming.
Awesome. And Judy just came in with a question, finding out what plants are specific to Trout Lake area. How do you find what that lake had? And is there any remnant communities to get a plant list from? We use remnant communities to inform our restorations. Are there any remnant communities?
So, remnant communities, is that what you said? Sorry.
Yeah, and I think excuse me, remnant plants, like what was once native, I guess. Is that what, Judy, you're relating this question to? If you're out there, Judy.
So the DNR also has what's like a list of what's present on each county. And that's part also of what they do when you submit your permit, the transplant permit that I talked about during the presentation. And in that one, they don't approve anything that wasn't ID'd in the county, unless it was ID'd in a surrounding county. And it depends too on who's reviewing, because sometimes if it's not there or if it's not ID'd there, then they won't allow you. For example, in the last picture of Mary's presentation, there was cardinal flower. And there are some counties where I can't use it because it hasn't been ID'd there. So I don't know if that fully answers that question.
Yeah, what I was interested in is finding out about, are there, maybe there doesn't exist anymore, are there remnant communities? Those are like undisturbed areas on a lake shore that we find them in woodlands, we find them for prairies, but when you're doing a lake shore, is there anything that we could go to and see and say, oh, this is a remnant, this hasn't been disturbed? And maybe there isn't, because there's just too much boating and people having fun on our lakes, that maybe there aren't any remnant communities on lake shores. And that's what I'm really interested in finding out is, does that even exist? But maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, it might not. And I know that at least 50% of the shores on Minnesota are and some level of disturbance. And so, yeah, we have manipulated in a way what was there before we started populating the lakes the way now they are now.
All right, I don't see any more questions, Allison, in the chat, but okay.
Yeah, and just encouraging everyone to check out all the great resources that our participants have shared. That's one of the things I love about getting together is that you all know stuff that we don't. itascawaters.org was here. The Savannah Institute was here. Just, yeah, really great knowledge in the chat as well. So everyone can, drop off as they need to. Are there any more questions? We always ask our speakers just to stay on a little bit extra. But if we're all done, we can all head out. And I just enjoyed this so much. I learned a lot. I did. Thank you.